All right, and for more, let's bring in Andrij Dobriansky, Director of Communications and Media with the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, as well as Blaine Holt, retired Brigadier General with the U.S. Air Force, former U.S. Deputy Military Representative to NATO, and a Newsmax contributor. Gentlemen, welcome to you both this morning. So things are looking rather hopeful, with President Trump saying that he's already making arrangements for a face-to-face meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky in order to discuss a pathway to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Andrij, what do you make of the meeting so far, and how much progress do you feel was made?
I think that what we saw, because today there was a follow-up meeting based out of London. It was virtual with those 30 countries that are called the Coalition of the Willing. And a lot of the talking points that President Trump dictated at the meeting, he was the one in the lead. And so the next meeting today, you heard a lot of follow-up based on what President Trump said, including working with different countries as a possible location. Today, we heard Switzerland was willing to host Putin and Zelensky. They would waive any of their war crime requirements as being signatories of the Rome Statute. They would be willing to host. We also know that President Putin said that he would host them in Moscow, which is obviously laughable. But I know that Steve Witkoff is working on this with the European partners, trying to find a location. And as we heard in the earlier report, we want to make sure this happens sooner rather than later, because every day we have additional bombings, including last night, while President Trump was on the phone with Putin, he launched his bombers on Ukraine again.
Yeah, and Blaine, what about you? I mean, what do you think of these meetings? We know that when Biden was in office, I believe he only spoke to Putin maybe once because he considered him a killer and a war criminal. That said, you know, Blaine, when it comes to diplomacy, don't you have to dialogue with those that you don't agree with, or maybe your adversary, if you want to achieve your goal? And the goal in this instance is peace.
Yeah, Tracy, no, you've nailed it. How many Ukrainian men have died because brave, never served a day or an hour in a uniform or held a gun, stood up and said, oh, we're not going to talk to Putin. We're not going to talk to these people. We're not going to engage in diplomacy. As a person who served in combat, I can just tell you that that is absolutely not where you want your leadership to be. You'll go to war for your country if you have to. And my goodness, the Ukrainian soldiers have proven not only are they courageous, but they're innovative on the battlefield. But against a force of European leaders who say, we have no intention of talking to Putin. What, money and weapons is going to get it done? No. So the first two steps, these meetings that we've seen so far, they're very difficult, and they're happening, and they're good. It's going to get harder from here. But to Andrej's point, and he makes a very good point, every day that those meetings don't happen, more killing happens. There is no ceasefire. There's not going to be one because Russia's pressing a military advantage right now. So there was one European leader yesterday, and I don't remember who said, well, maybe in a couple of months we can have another meeting. And President Trump corrected him and said, oh, no, we're not doing that. We're going to have this within 2 weeks. And that's a sense of urgency they all need to have. The killing has to stop.
Yeah, indeed it does, and I think we all like to see that. I want to shift now to the war in Gaza. Hamas has reportedly agreed to a new ceasefire proposal. A senior Hamas official reportedly claims that the proposal calls for the release of 10 living hostages and 18 deceased hostages who will be engaged for exchange, that is, for 200 Palestinian prisoners. Israel will also release all Palestinian minors and a female prisoner. But just last week, Israel was approving new attack plans. So, Blaine, let me ask you this. What's your takeaway here? What do you think will actually happen?
I think Hamas is just trying to buy any kind of time for their own survival, quite honestly. I think they're going to use these information operations, and that's what they are, not good faith negotiations, to inflict more pain on the hearts of the families that have these hostages and the country. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm dubious about their intent. We've seen this before. They're not going to interrupt what the IDF has to do, which is to close this down and go rescue as many as they can.
And Andrij, I'm going to give you the final word here before we wrap up.
Yeah, I want to pick up on what Blaine said about releasing hostages, and that was something discussed yesterday. Not adults, but children, and also talking to Blaine's point about dealing with diplomacy. The fortitude of the First Lady of Ukraine to draft a letter, diplomatic letter, and then telling her husband, "I need you to deliver this letter to President Putin." Yesterday, in the White House, we heard world leaders talking about the children who have been kidnapped by Ukraine, not because of anything but the First Lady. And that was continued today in meetings. I want to congratulate the First Lady. That's all I've been talking about on the news in Ukraine. People in Ukraine are talking about, they're amazed at how the First Lady has changed the international discussion to include the stolen children of Ukraine.
Yeah, and it was beautifully written as well. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for coming on. Appreciate your insights.